Let me tell you about the moment I realized I was carrying around dead weight. I was rebuilding a deployment pipeline at 2 in the morning, juggling 5 different tools, copy-pasting between a terminal emulator, a wiki, a code editor, a search tab, and a config management dashboard. And I thought, half of these windows exist purely because the other tools don't talk to each other. That was 18 months ago. Today, that whole setup is basically gone. And what replaced it isn't a single magic platform. It's 5 very specific tools that each do one thing so well that everything else became redundant. I'm going to walk you through each one, tell you exactly what it replaced, and be honest about where it still falls short. No fluff, no affiliate cheerleading. Let's get into it. The first tool is Cursor. And if you're still on a traditional IDE with a bolted-on Copilot plugin, this one is going to feel like a meaningful step forward. Cursor started as a fork of VS Code, so the learning curve is almost zero if you're already living in that ecosystem. But the real difference is that the AI integration isn't a sidebar. It's the core editing experience. You can highlight a function and ask it to refactor for readability, or describe a new feature in plain language and watch it generate across multiple files simultaneously while keeping context. What it actually replaced for me was my Copilot subscription, my Stack Overflow tab reflex, and about 40% of my code review prep time. The honest downside is that it's a proprietary client, so if you're working with sensitive code bases, you need to look hard at their data handling policies before you pipe production code through it. The privacy controls are there, but you have to configure them deliberately. Next is Warp, and specifically the AI features that have matured in it over the last year. Warp replaced iTerm2, plus a whole collection of shell aliases and custom scripts I'd built up over years. The AI command completion isn't just auto-complete. You can type a natural language description of what you're trying to do, and it suggests the actual command, with flags explained in line. For sysadmins, the block-based output is genuinely useful because you can reference previous command outputs as context for the next one. What I still don't love is that Warp is cloud-connected by default, which means it's a non-starter for air-gapped environments. If you're working on secure infrastructure, that's a real constraint. But for day-to-day development workflows, it's the best terminal experience I've used. Third on the list is Notion AI. And I want to be careful here because Notion itself has been around a while and people have complicated feelings about it. What changed for me is using the AI layer specifically for technical documentation. I used to maintain internal runbooks in Confluence, and the process was slow and inconsistent because documentation always loses to shipping. With Notion AI, I can paste in a rough set of notes from an incident or a deployment and ask it to produce a structured runbook in our team's format. It drafts, I edit, and the total time drops by about 70%. It replaced Confluence for us, yes. But more importantly, it replaced the friction that meant documentation didn't get written at all. The limitation is real-time collaboration at scale. If you have a large team with complex permissions, Confluence still has structural advantages. Notion hasn't fully closed. Fourth is Perplexity Pro, and this one surprises people the most when I mention it. I replaced Google as my primary research tool for technical questions. Not for everything, I'm not using it for casual browsing, but for the research I used to do when evaluating a new library, debugging an obscure error message, or understanding a CVE. Perplexity cites its sources inline, which matters enormously for technical work because you can actually follow the chain back to the original documentation or issue thread. It also handles follow-up questions in context, so you can drill down without re-explaining the whole problem. The honest trade-off is that it still hallucinates on niche or very recent topics, and the citations don't always point to the most authoritative source. You still need to verify. But as a starting point, it's faster and more structured than a raw search results page. The fifth tool is a workflow rather than a single product. It's using AI code generation directly inside Ansible playbooks and Terraform configurations. I'm specifically talking about using models like Claude or GPT-4o via API, integrated into my config management process, to generate and validate infrastructure as code from plain English specs. What this replaced was a significant amount of manual templating work and the tribal knowledge barrier that made it hard for junior team members to contribute to infrastructure code without heavy review. You describe what you need: a hardened Nginx config, a security group with least privilege rules, and you get a working starting point with comments explaining each decision. The risk here is obvious. You cannot blindly trust generated infrastructure code. Every output needs to be reviewed and tested in a staging environment. But as a productivity multiplier for experienced engineers, it's real. So what's the honest verdict? These 5 tools didn't replace my judgment, my debugging instincts, or my team's institutional knowledge. What they replaced was friction. The repetitive, low-cognition parts of the workflow that were eating time without adding value. If you're evaluating any of these, my advice is pick the one that addresses your biggest current bottleneck and actually commit to it for 30 days before forming an opinion. You won't get the value from any of these tools by dipping in occasionally. If this breakdown was useful, subscribe. I put out 1 video a week, strictly for technical professionals, no beginner fluff. And drop a comment telling me which of these 5 you're most skeptical about. I'll respond. And if enough people push back on the same one, I'll do a dedicated deep dive. Links to all 5 tools are in the description.